Father. And it warms my heart a year later to see all of these, or most of the familiar faces again, because it's a testament to how all of you have stood by my mum and I, and for that we are very grateful. So thank you very much for supporting us through this year. We really appreciate it. All right, so firstly, to kick off the family and friends speaking, I would like to call upon my dad's eldest brother, Mandu Daddy, if you could please come and say a few words.
Thank you, Kiara. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, devotees, families and friends. It gives me pleasure to speak on behalf of my late brother, because he was very inspirational in the spiritual part of my life. The little that I did, have encounters with him, we always spoke about Krishna consciousness. He would take this word far and wide, and he would speak to me all the time. I want to quote something that he always said to me when he did speak to me. He said, "Do not worry about your bank balance, but rather accumulate your spiritual bank balance, because that is what's going to take you back to Godhead." I would just like to say, he is not here in the physical form, but in the spiritual form, he is most certainly here with us. And I would like to say, echo his words that coming from me to the rest of the people, build your spiritual bank balance and not your material money bank balance, because that's what's going to take you back to Godhead. I think you know better than me, but just to reiterate his words, which he had left with me, and I will never forget those words. My brother, as you know him as Ashley, was a very hardworking somebody, and he was a very family-orientated person. His daughter, who was his life, he looked up to her, and she never let him down, not forgetting his wife, and obviously the temple and the devotees. He was very passionate about distribution of sanctified food. And I mean that because we do not know the meaning of sanctified food. But when I did ask him, he said food prepared here and then offered becomes sanctified, and that became prasadam, which would bless us all, even if we did not attend discourses or the temple and the services. So he was very passionate about doing service to the humanities, to the public, and I must say that maybe you don't know, he's dead and gone. But the sanctified food he used to distribute to the non-believers, if I may describe it, as in the Christian people and the Muslim people. So Krishna consciousness reached a lot of people through Ashley. During the time of COVID, he would even do service to the people of the general community. He used his vehicle in the service of humanity. He used to distribute water on a very large scale in Tongaat. And we know what the people of Tongaat went through at the time when they did not have water. So besides serving the temple, the devotees, I think he did his service to the general public as well. When I know my brother, for the people that know me, I'm a police officer of Durban Central. And when the Hare Krishna movement would come to the drive-in site, it was his duty to prepare and fetch all the Maharajas from the airport, and he used to serve them. I'm really going to miss that because he's not around anymore. I hope somebody else has fulfilled his shoes and is taking that forward. To the devotees that supported my niece and my sister-in-law, thank you once again, because for myself, I have a very busy schedule. I work a 7-day week, and I've just worked and come. But be it as it may, we had to serve the public, because that's what and the way I work. I'd like to say thank you for attending, and I think it's a very small crowd, but a very listening crowd, in the sense of Saturday afternoon, people have sacrificed, left their homes, and have come out here. I think my brother would really have appreciated that. He's looking down upon us, and may we enjoy the rest of the program. And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Mother Daddy, for those really lovely, sweet words. Our next speaker is going to be our oldest cousin, Samain.
Haribol. Thank you, Kiara. Hi, guys. So my capacity, or my discourse, if you will, on Ashley Prabhu is purely going to be on the influence he's had on myself, being his nephew, my brother, younger brother, and by extension, the cousins. I think if I have to summarize his arc in my life, with me being the eldest, love definitely comes to mind in whichever unorthodox ways it reached us. A formal definition of what family constitutes, that was a big proponent of his philosophy. And an acute sense of justice. He knew what was right, even though at times the articulation and enunciation may have escaped him, but he had a very tangible sense for what is proper, good morals, ethics, etc. And for those of us in the cousin spectrum that he has touched, Kiara is part of this. We often have evenings when we'd lament on how he used to come home and check our reports, our school reports. And I'm sure you guys heard some laughter, because that is really what he was. Besides being a face of the devotees in the temple, in his family capacity, he wanted to make sure that his nieces and nephews, they did better than what he achieved. So he was a case of do what I tell you, not as I do. And I think his peers are also, they have that same vein of thought. But yeah, he just made sure he wanted to give us the best, irrespective of what threatened us. Both sides of the spectrum, whether it be something as extreme as alcoholism and abuse, or whether it be something as minor as not having food. He would personally phone me and tell me, listen, I know you are studying, you need support. Can I get Auntie Elaine? And shame, she'd put Auntie Elaine under the duress of preparing paneer biryani and dropping off at home. And just having that call to know, you got that support. So yeah, I think besides being a martyr for academic excellence, he also, to many of us, was a savior or a hero in his own right. Chiefly among which was saving us from our potentially life-threatening decisions and sometimes blunders in life, because nobody's perfect. He had a way of putting things and words and being logical. And yeah, I think that's why the family sort of has nominated me to be his successor in my concepts and my brain. But yeah, so he was definitely there. He was one of those people from a family perspective, from an uncle perspective. If you needed him physically, if you needed his words of reason and his logic, you could depend on him and you could count on him. And that's a strong sense of influence which has rubbed off onto my brother and myself. And that's why it has shaped us to be one of the people or one of the men we are today. So yeah, I think he has saved us. His influence is still felt in the family. Every time any one of my aunts, uncles, or cousins pick up a tulsi mala, that's his influence. That's something definitely to smile about. So yeah, just thank you for listening to my experiences about him. And Haribol.
Thank you so much, Smain, for those wonderful words. I would like to call up next Hansraj Prabhu, who is one of my father's dear friends.
Thank you, Kiara, and thank you, Elaine. I feel so humbled by the honor given to me. It's strange that I actually knew him for a long period of time, something like 35 years, but I didn't know him very intimately, perhaps like other people here. So I first met Ashley Prabhu at the Clayfield Namahata in Unit 5, 35 years ago, about 35 years ago. And he didn't quite fit the mold of a Vaishnava that we had in mind as young Vaishnavas then. We thought of, like a local guy who was coming to the Namahata. But over the years, I got to know him, and I got to know his internal situation. And I can assure you, he was very well situated as a devotee. In fact, I intend to share a few anecdotes with you, just to show you how he thought. He worked at RTI in Verulam, and that's where I would meet him at the taxi rank, because he boarded the taxi often with me from Verulam to Phoenix. And on one occasion, he was seated right at the back of the taxi. And in those days, the taxis were a lot smaller than they are today, and the back seats were raised several inches to accommodate the sound systems and all that. And there was Ashley Prabhu, who, as you know, was not in any way vertically challenged. He was seated right on the back, right at the back of the taxi, and he was crouched. But his hand was over the sill of the window with his RTI badge proudly poking out the taxi. And I was walking past, because that taxi was almost full, and I was walking past to sit in one of the other taxis. And when he saw me, Ashley would always speak a few octaves higher than was necessary. So he screamed, "Haribol, Haribol!" And I can tell you, everybody that was seated in that taxi had to be unseated to make space, because he insisted that I must sit with him right at the back. And so I sat with him. And Prabhu, he held back. He never held back in his discussions about spiritual matters, even in the company of what we call karmis. And so that was how Prabhu was. And he helped me out of many bad patches in life, so I'm very grateful to him. And I lost touch with Prabhu after a while. I'd moved away from Durban. And then on one occasion, I hadn't seen him for something like 5 or 6 years. And I was in the ShopRite, the Checkers. One thing we had in common, that I had in common with Prabhu, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. Should I continue? Okay. So one thing we had in common was we were both diabetics. So when I was in the shopping aisle in Checkers, I was looking for sugar-free biscuits. And so I was standing at all the regular biscuits. And he saw me from right down of the shopping aisle. And he screamed, "Haribol! The sugar-free biscuits is this side." And the ShopRite was so busy, and everyone just stopped to look at him. So he was really a larger-than-life character. I also come to my place, to my house, and visit. And I was very grateful that he was putting some time. And on one occasion, when I was seeing him off, he got in his van and he was backing out of my driveway. But I had tulsi plants growing throughout my yard, and Maharani grew in places often that wasn't convenient. So I was trying to direct him, And I told him, Prabhu, I've got this problem with so much of tulsi plants in my yard. I'm thinking about repotting them and, putting them in places where they can grow, without obstructing. And he said, Prabhu, don't you ever do that. He said, please don't do that. Just give her a little space in your yard, and she will give you space in Vrindavan. That was how he was situated. Now, when I reminisce about all the incidents I had with him, it brings me great joy. And I know the best description for Prabhu was Karma Yogi. This is the person that Krishna speaks of in Bhagavad Gita, when he says that the best form of action is action in Krishna consciousness. So we take Krishna very lightly. But, he told me one other thing. I don't know if he shared it with you. He said, if the Vedas are the operator's manual for the universe, Bhagavad Gita is the book of guarantee. He said, Krishna gives you so many guarantees in Bhagavad Gita. And the guarantee he gives to the Karma Yogi specifically is that he will give the understanding by which to come to me. So he didn't strike me as a great scholar or, a scholar in the Vedic tradition for that matter. But I could see that he was very advanced spiritually. And I have no doubt that wherever he has reached, he's involved in the mission of Guru and Gauranga. So I thank you for the honor. Excuse my emotions. I hope all of you are blessed by Ashley Prabhu's association. And thank you for the honor once again. Jai Radhe, Jai Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for those lovely words. Next up, we will have Uncle Vikash. I'm not sure if he's here. We're supposed to speak. Okay, it seems like he's not here. Moving on, we'll have Srinivas Prabhu, who is also one of my father's other very dear friends, to speak as well.
Namaham Vishnu Badaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavade Praskachane Shatarine Vanchakalpa Tribhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bebacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. It's surprising that I actually stand out here today and I feel this, it's like as if I've been with Ashley Prabhu like yesterday. So the time factor is against all of us. But at the same time, what I can resonate with Ashley Prabhu is compassion and care. I mean, we used to have some long conversations. I mean, Kiara Mataji, you would know, and Ashley Prabhu's good wife. He was always concerned about the community. And when I say community, it's not just a devotee community. He also looked at the well-wishers of ISKCON. He would go to the extent, during COVID, risk his life just to get medication to people he'd never known. During the water shortage up in Chongat, I recall that he was washing these containers just to fill water to give it to people that he didn't even know. But at the same time, he was very strongly situated in his heart that he needed to give Krishna to these people. And we all know this, we can only give something that we have. And I can tell you this very boldly, yes, he had Krishna. There are many people that will reach out to him requesting for hampers, and he would go out of his way to do this, even though he didn't have it. But somehow he said, Krishna will make the arrangement. And I've seen it unfold many a times. So, yes, we would always be missing Ashley Prabhu's association. But for all of us, I think we're very strongly situated to understand that there's a higher purpose to everything. And yes, I understand that Ashley Prabhu has already made it out there. We always had this discussion, and he would always tell me, Srinivas, if anything happens to you, I will be there to do everything for you. And I recall on that day, when I was at the crematorium, I stood aside, I got a little emotional, and I said, you played me this one. I'm just standing at the side and I'm saying this. It's supposed to be the other way around. But that compassion that we shared, very much the caring, he always took me as his brother. He'll always call me up and he'll say, I haven't heard from you. And I recall that the night that he had passed on, there was actually a missed call from him. And this was roughly around about, I think it must have been like at about 10:30. And I was actually going through some of the messages in this last couple of days. And I was recalling, wondering what was that call all about. And I actually missed that. I really missed that. But I know for a fact that Ashley Prabhu will continue his service wherever he is. I'll give you an example. During the festivals like Janmashtami, or even if it was Lord Balaram's appearance day, in my presence he would call out to people. He says, here's an opportunity for you to give back to Krishna. And he says, I don't need anything from you. Give me your time. If you don't want to give me that time, you can make some contribution in your name. And you know what his actual words would be? He says, I'll wash your feet. Now imagine the humility. Kiara Mataji, you recall that? He would actually say that. And I would say to Ashley Prabhu, you would go to such an extent to do this, to bring people to Krishna. He said, Srinivas, I want to do this. And he never said Prabhupada. He always said Prabhupada, he said. So when I used to always think about him saying Prabhupada, he says, this is my father. He used the word pa towards the end. Never completed the entire word. And I said, I understand what you are saying. But also Ashley Prabhu's personality, not many people would be able to understand. He was very bold and forthright, but there was a message always behind whatever he said. And it took some time for people to maybe try to understand that. But if you listen very carefully, he had this way of coming across to encourage people to participate in the programs or to make some contribution or come and just render some devotional service. Now for someone who does that, it means that he has a very special place in his heart for many people that he doesn't even know. So I miss this here very much. I miss his kind association. And I pray that the Lord will always take care of him and also take care of his good family. And Kiara Mataji, he always spoke very proud about you. So you always hold him in that high esteem as the good daughter that you are. And Elaine Mataji, even yourself, just continue. I understand that yes, the separation may be there, but as a devotee community, we're always here for you. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Go Premananda, Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for those really lovely words. I can bear testament to the very long conversations that Prabhu and my father used to have well into the night. It's a very sweet association to witness. Okay, so we're in this beautiful temple, which is affiliated with ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and we preach the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. This is a philosophy that my father held dear to him. And I asked him, so many of you here would understand we have 4 regulative principles, and we lead a life of great discipline. Naturally, my father, previously to coming into Krishna consciousness, did not lead such a lifestyle. And it is difficult to give all of that up, to lead this life of discipline. So I had asked him, how did you end up in Krishna consciousness? So he told me the story that over 30 years ago, he purchased a Bhagavad Gita from a devotee, and upon completing the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he gave up meat eating. Upon finishing the Bhagavad Gita, he decided to surrender his life to Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. And I thought that was a very, very touching story, because essentially, nearly overnight, a book had changed his entire life, and that faith would continue to be such a big part of his life, and he would pass it on to my mom and then to myself. So now we're going to hear a bit more on the philosophy that changed my father's life overnight from one of our very esteemed and learned members of our congregation, His Grace Jagannath Pandit. I'd also like to mention, I think on the program it says that Prabhu is to speak for 30 minutes. He will be going on for a bit longer than that. That was just a typo, so I apologize for that. So yes, Prabhu.
So let's have a round of applause for those wonderful speakers. Really, it's really so heartwarming to hear all of them speak glowingly about Ashley and, giving us insight into his life and what he believed and what was dear to him. But I also request you to give a big round of applause to our diminutive and petite Kiara Mataji. I tell you, it's not easy for her to stand in front of you. Many of you are her elders, and many of you are her mentors, but still, her dad will be so proud of her today. Don't you think? Absolutely. So thank you, Kiara. This is the crowning glory of this festival, actually. May I also add my voice to welcoming all of you, and especially a warm welcome to those who are coming to this holy place for the very first time. We wish you have a profound experience here today, and we wish that you'll come back again and again. The house of the Lord is open, and we have an open door policy to everyone. You're more than welcome to come. Consider this to be your place as well. At this holy place, during this auspicious month of Purushottam, imagine that, a month that has been awarded the name of the Supreme Lord Himself. Purushottam means the greatest personality. Just like chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita is called Purushottam Yoga, and is translated to be the yoga of the Supreme Person. Similarly, this month is that special month. And here we are having this wonderful first memorial festival, this Vaishnava Utsav. It's a festival at which we are celebrating the life and beliefs and accolades of Ashley Rameshwarnath Prabhu. We are also praying for him, praying to him. We are praying for blessings and we are offering blessings at the same time. And today is also a day when the family, Elaine Mataji, his good wife, and his daughter, and the immediate family are reciprocating with all of you for your words of comfort, your solace, what it meant, the support you had given this family over the last year. And it's their way of saying, thank you so much. So please accept this in the spirit that is offered to you. Whenever you go to a holy place, expect a few things to happen. The first is that you should end wiser than when you entered. And remember this word, wiser. It's an acronym where the second letter of the word is the I. It stands for you becoming inspired. You go, and you're looking to get inspired, but at the same time, to get intrigued. We are here to pick your brain. We're here to challenge you. You're here to think about the greater aspects and meaning and purpose to life. It's not just that you ritualistically attend a function like this. And then the third letter, the S, stands for that you should get stimulated. You get cajoled into some kind of action. The E is for energized. You become energized. You leave this place, but this place is the conduit through which spiritual energies are channeled. So when you go to that font where spiritual energy is available, like if you put your finger in a plug and it's turned on, what will happen with you? You get the energies will go through your entire body. In the same way, this spiritual energy is channeled through here. And the R represents deepening relationships. Expect your relationship with the Supreme Lord. There is only one Lord. We may call him and know him by different names, and our understanding of him, his totality, will be to the extent of our own limited intellect and our own limited abilities. So some of these things are bound to happen, and if they do happen to you, say, yeah, I had a wonderful spiritual experience going to the new Jagannath Mandir in Phoenix. You see me sitting on this dais. It's not because I want to be seated at a higher level than you. On the contrary, I'm just a messenger. I'm a servant to those who have come with a great message for all of humanity. Not just the human beings, but to every living entity, plants, animals, and beasts, everyone, insects. This message is for every living entity. And representing that illustrious line of spiritual masters, the person takes a vow to present the edicts and final conclusions of the scriptures exactly as they are, without any adulteration, nor any opinionation that will that will cloud the meaning. So therefore, a huge responsibility rests on whoever sits on this dais, which is known as the Vyasasan, the seat of Srila Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord himself. He is the compiler of all the Vedic scriptures. So this knowledge is coming directly from the Lord himself in an unbroken chain of historically verifiable personalities. And therefore, it is our solemn responsibility and duty to present the information as it is. So, today's illumination is on the topic of the disease of diseases. The disease of diseases. Whilst you'll contemplate on this topic, and whilst you would think about, firstly, what is it? What are the symptoms? Because every disease will have some symptoms, right? We recognize a sick person by how they are. Somebody, you can just think, somebody who's got end-stage cancer. What would he look like? Just looking at him, you could recognize that here's a sick person. Right? The emaciated, for example. Lack of vitality. Lying in a bed. Barely able to speak. In pain. So, like that. So if we're talking of the disease of diseases, obviously we're not talking about some mild disease. Obviously, right? We have seen epidemics and then we have seen pandemics. But this disease is beyond pandemic. It's a Holocaust. And therefore it'll be very dangerous. It'll be devouring. That means it leaves no one spared. It will be debilitating, meaning that it will impair your potential. And it will be depressive. So people will be affected psychologically. You will be affected. Depression. Just the very thought will make you feel sick. So this is what we're speaking about. The disease of diseases. Recently we had experience with COVID, right? It changed many of our lives forever. So whilst you contemplate on this, what this disease may be, what symptoms and signs you look for in a disease, what are the possible causes, what will be the cure, and so on, I will now chant some auspicious prayers to confer blessings upon all of us, to invoke the mercy of our great, grand spiritual masters, so that whatever we say will have the potency and impact of how they intended it. And thereafter we would read a particular chosen text from a book called Nectar of Instruction, and we'll kindly ask our IT people to put it up at that time so that we'll chant the mantra itself, and thereafter we'll read the meaning, and then we'll speak a few more words of enlightenment thereafter. Om ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्या ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम्। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Could we please have the 7th verse of the Nectar of Devotion? Sorry, Nectar of Instruction. I hope you got the right verse. Okay, thank you. Sriyat Krishna Nama Charitani Sitapi Avidya Pitto Patapta Rasanasya Naruchikanu Kintu Vadharan Anudinam Khalu Saiva Justam Swadvi Kramad Bhavati Tadgada Mulam Mantri. The translation reads, the holy name, character, pastimes and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet, like sugar candy. When we say Krishna, Krishna is referring to God and describing God as the all-attractive person. It's not that Krishna is a different God, or Krishna is a Hindu God, or a secular God. There is only one God. But God, being unlimited, has unlimited names. And all his primary names, they relate to him very intimately. In this name of Krishna, it's referring to him in his all-attractiveness. When somebody approaches a person, recognizing their all-attractiveness, that includes their beauty and their knowledge, their fame, their strength, their everything. You're approaching with such a loving sentiment. So straight away you can see that the basis of the interaction is love. They are all transcendently sweet, like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of ignorance cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. Now, this scripture was written over 500 years ago, and therefore the language that's used, like when it says his, at that time the use of the word his was not gender specific, unlike the sensitivities that prevail at the moment. Right? So please be mindful of that as we read a couple of paragraphs. So we're not being chauvinistic or anything like that. So just try to understand the essence of the meaning, or else we'll miss the points completely. The purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada reads, "The holy name of Lord Krishna, his quality, pastimes, and so forth, are all of the nature of absolute truth, beauty, and bliss. Naturally, they are very sweet, like sugar candy, which appeals to everyone. Nescience means ignorance. Nescience, however, is compared to the disease called jaundice, which is caused by bilious secretions. Attacked by jaundice, the tongue of a diseased person cannot palatably relish sugar candy. Rather, a person with jaundice considers something sweet to taste very bitter. Avidya, or ignorance, similarly perverts the ability to relish the transcendentally palatable names, quality, form, and pastimes of Krishna. Despite this disease, if one with great care and attention takes to Krishna consciousness, chanting the holy name and hearing Krishna's transcendental pastimes, one's ignorance will be destroyed and their tongue enabled to taste the sweetness of the transcendental nature of Krishna and his paraphernalia. Such a recovery of spiritual health is possible only by the regular cultivation of Krishna consciousness. When a person in the material world takes more interest in the materialistic way of life than in Krishna consciousness, one is considered to be in a diseased condition. The normal condition is to remain an eternal servant of the Lord. This healthy condition is lost when the living entity forgets Krishna due to being attracted by the external features of Krishna's illusory energy, which is called Maya. The world of Maya is called Durashraya, which means a false or bad shelter. One who puts his faith in Durashraya becomes a candidate for hoping against hope. It's a no-win situation. In the material world, everyone is trying to become happy. And although nescience, and although their material attempts are baffled in every way due to their nescience, they cannot understand their mistakes. People try to rectify one mistake by making another. This is the way of the struggle for existence in the material world. If one in this condition is advised to take to Krishna consciousness or God consciousness and be happy, then there's the need for him to accept such instructions. The purport continues for a few pages more. We'll stop there. I'll give you the reference, and the reference will be up on the screen so that you can Google it and you can read the rest of the purport yourself. This disease that we are alluding to earlier is called forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord. Every one of us has entered this material realm due to this one fact, that we have forgotten Him. And when we have forgotten Him, we are now in a diseased condition. We're no longer healthy. And in that diseased condition, the symptom is that we have lost our taste. Just like during COVID, one of the symptoms are that you lose your sense of smell. But in this disease, you lose your taste. You lose your taste to hear about the Lord. You lose your taste to chant His name. You lose your taste to engage in spiritual activities. You lose your taste to attend satsang, where the Lord is glorified. These are the symptoms. And we can recognize that in ourselves. To the degree that those symptoms are prevalent, to that degree, we are in a moribund state. And everything appears bitter. Everything that's spiritual appears bitter. Just as the example is cited, that when one has jaundice, the tongue not only loses its taste, but the tongue tastes everything as bitter. In fact, there's a very nice shloka in the Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, that says that material life is like nectar at the beginning, but poison at the end. And spiritual life is diametrically opposed, where it's like poison at the beginning, but nectar at the end. So, the treatment advocated for jaundice is to take sugar candy. Rock candy, you know what that is? It's those hardened chunks of sugar that looks like, I know when we were kids, we used to think, hey, this looks like diamonds. And it comes in all shapes, and some of them are transparent and so on. So that's rock candy, and you suck on the rock candy. Initially, as you suck it, the rock candy, although sweet, will taste bitter because of the disease condition. But as you take more and more of the rock candy, the liver heals. And as the liver heals, gradually the taste comes back. So it's not so bitter. And there's no bitterness at all. And finally, you start to taste the sweetness. So, when we look at some of the allied factors that contribute to our forgetfulness, and it's important to do this analysis, because this internal introspection helps us to understand our disease state and helps us to identify the stumbling blocks and those factors which needs urgent attention. And the first will be ignorance. You know, when we look at knowledge, there are three large categories. The first category is that which we know for sure. That which we know we know. 1 + 1 is 2. We know it. We know it all the time. And then you get the second category of knowledge, which is that which we know that we don't know. Like when I have a problem with my car, I'll take it to the agents. I'll take it directly to the agents because I know that I don't know about this car. So it's very nice to know what you don't know. Of course, if I put my heart and mind to it, I could become a master mechanic. But I don't want to do it. I'd rather let somebody else do it. That's not my natural proclivity. So that which you know that you don't know is the second category of knowledge. And the third category of knowledge, and that by far is the biggest category for most of us, is that which we don't know that we don't know. Because if you knew it, you know what to do about it. And herein lies a powerful empowerment to keep an open mind and to not approach transcendental subject matter with bias, with preconceived judgmental attitudes. Because the moment you do that, you're imposing your own limited intellect, no matter how smart one may be. And therefore, you're restricting your own ability to perceive and understand the greater science that is not commonly available to everyone. And all it takes to destroy everything that's available is like how we get programmed by conventional religious teachings, and we get slot into different compartments. But God is beyond religion. God is beyond religion. All religions are created according to time, circumstance, and place. They come to serve a particular purpose. And they are meant to teach one how to love God. First to know Him, and then to love Him. Everyone is doing that. But in order to love somebody, the more information you have, the easier it becomes to love. If you got zero information, let's say I tell you, here's a person walking on the road, love him. And you look at me, cockeyed, and say, hey, what have you been smoking, Jagannath? Where you come from? But if I tell you, here's a person, he speaks the truth only. He's humble. He's kind. He's caring. He's loving. He looks after animals, the sick. He donates his own wealth. And you say, wow, this is interesting. I'd like to know more about him. Tell me more. At least I want to meet such a person. I may not love him immediately, but I want to meet him. I would like to know more. He's somebody I can learn from. So similarly, in the science of understanding God, the more authentic information we receive, the easier it becomes to develop a very close filial relationship with the Supreme Lord. So the first one was ignorance that I mentioned, right? The second is forgetfulness. By nature, we're very forgetful. If I had to ask you, what did you do this time 3 days ago? I tell you, most of us will struggle to answer that question. What were you doing at this time 3 days ago? You may tell me in general terms, oh, I was at work, oh, I was this or that, but that's too general. I'll ask you specifically. You don't even know what time it is now, but I'm saying at this time. So we are forgetful. And this is a major hindrance in our pursuit of spiritual excellence, that we become forgetful easily. So even what we're discussing here today, accept that you'll forget it soon. Unless you meditate on this, unless you process this information, unless you contemplate on it, The next factor is distractibility. You know, you just have to look at the kids of today. They glued to the social media and the cell phone nonsense. In fact, you look at the kids especially, they're all using binoculars now. Take lens glasses when they're 8 years old. Because all their lives they have been with this, watching the screen at this close. And as the eyesight gets worse, the screen gets closer. In fact, you can't even talk to them when they're in that state. It's called an alpha state, by the way. It's an alpha state of consciousness. You can't talk to them because they blanked out everything else. They're so engrossed in what it is. So in the same way, all of us are distracted and we become distractible. So we do things like watch telly all the time, or go to the movies, or watch the rugby game or the soccer and this and that. And so these things steal your time. Understand what is happening to you. With every sunrise and every sunset, your life is ebbing away. And wasting time on frivolous activities is the allurement of the illusory energy, Maya. Maya, the personality controlling this material universe, her name is Durga. And her task is to keep the delinquent people in this prison house of material existence. Now, many people who are not au fait with the subject matter erroneously believe that we have a plethora of gods and goddesses. That is not true. There's only one God. But what has happened, this has become lost in translation, where you had Westerners trying to translate complex Sanskrit words into the language of the Aborigines, of the less civilized and less advanced people, into English, that is. There's no equivalent word for devas and devatas. So therefore they lump them all as gods, spelled with a small g, as opposed to a capital G. But these devas and devatas are higher beings who are tasked with performing specific functions in the universe. It's much akin to having a parliament with portfolios of ministers. Like you'll have a minister of education, and her name is Saraswati. Minister of wealth, money, her name, again it's a woman's, her name is Lakshmi Devi. Minister of oxygen. Did you know there's a minister of oxygen? Without whom you won't be able to breathe for 3 minutes. In 3 minutes you're gone. The personality tasked to perform this function is Vayu. Minister of Energy Affairs. Surya, sun. He's in charge of the sun planet. Because without the sun, there's no life also. Minister of rain. Without rain, there's no life too. So all these, that's Indra, by the way, and all these different personalities perform specialized tasks empowered by the Supreme Lord and in accordance with His will. So therefore, understand the difference, but also don't make the mistake to think that everyone is God. A huge mistake. All right, so this is the distractibility side. And then the next factor to consider is bad company. You become who you associate with. If you spend all your time in the company of drug addicts, don't think you won't end up taking drugs. It's a simple fact. So therefore make wise choices. Give up bad company. Even though you may be attached to them, even maybe there's somebody who's your very close buddy, your friend. But if they're bad news, respectfully move away, or else you're going to end up in that. And then there are other collective factors that influence us on a more global scale, like television, movies, which glamorizes all the sinful activities. Music. Certain types of music are just horrible. And we just subject it, we think, oh, everybody is dancing and this and that is so nice. But what it's doing to you, what it's doing to you. So we have to contemplate this. You have to use your rational brain. You have to use your intelligence and not just be a stooge manipulated by others and made to dance like a wimp. Other aspects of in the global space would be things like atheistic leaderships. Scientists in the past, let's say in the 1970s, the vast majority of scientists were theists. They were believers in God. But today, the vast majority of scientists are non-believers. They're going all out to discredit the Lord, and they're going all out to try to disprove his existence using all kinds of manipulative and questionable methodologies to do so. But to those who remain gullible and those who do not scrutinize this information, you become a toy to be manipulated in their hands. So for smart people like you all, do not simply accept anything just because the next person is doing so. Question everything. Check it out. There's no place for blind faith. Because if you have blind faith today in A, tomorrow you'll have the same blind faith in B. There has to be a solid foundation of rationality underpinning your faith and underpinning your pursuit of spiritual excellence. So what's the cure to this disease? We have heard a little about its cause. We heard a little about its symptomatology, the signs that are present. But what is the cure? The cure is given in this wonderful verse. How wonderful it is that simply by chanting the holy names of the Lord, just glorifying the Lord is the best process and a universal process common to every religion. Everyone does it. Glorification. And of all the different facets of glorification, calling out his bona fide names with love are absolutely the crest jewel. And you will notice also how when your child calls out your name, Mommy would love, or Papa would love, doesn't your heart melt at that moment? Oh, my child just called me. In the same way, we like to be called. Your your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your husband and wife, when they call you lovingly, they call out your name, how do you feel? Immediately it touches the heart. So in the same way, when we call out the Lord's name, and the Lord has unlimited number of names, you can call out any one of those names. You're not restricted to call out a particular name. Naam namakari bahuda nija sarva shaktis. These are unlimited names. But as long as you call out a bona fide name of God with love, then naturally you start to establish a connection with Him. And naturally you start to get closer and closer. And the more you call out His name with love, the more this disease of forgetfulness will dissipate. Right? Because you're remembering Him more and more. The overriding principle of all religions is to remember the Supreme Lord and never forget Him. To remember Krishna and never forget Him. That's the ultimate principle. Every other principle is subservient to this point. It's meant to support whatever other activity is taking place to get to this point. And just like when somebody is diseased and we're administering a cure, you would require a little faith to accept that cure. Because you'll go to a doctor, a bona fide doctor, you'll go to a recommended doctor, and the doctor says, okay, for you, I have to give you this medication, and you take this medication, you get better. So you accept it, right? You may not even know the doctor. You may not even know the hospital, but you may be admitted to that place. So you have a little faith. And that's all it takes in spiritual life, is to suspend disbelief and have a little faith. Just that little faith will get you on the road and the pathway back home. So, the administration, just knowing the cure for the illness is not good enough. One has to administer the medication with proper care and attention. So simply knowing that chanting the Lord's holy names is the panacea for our ills does not suffice. One has to carefully, with attention, chant those names. Just as your medication is administered to you with due care and attention. What is that attention? The doctor says, take this tablet, one tablet 3 times a day with a glass full of water. It's ludicrous and foolish for somebody to say, oh, I'll take 3 tablets once a day with 1 glass of water. Why must I drink 3 glasses of water? And why must I spread it out over 3 doses? Isn't it? Would any person do that? Or even worse, you say, man, I got no taste in my mouth. These tablets are tasting horrible. I'll put it in my nose. Even more ludicrous, right? So therefore, the medication has to be administered with due care and attention. The attention is that you hear. When you chant the Lord's holy names, all you have to do is make sure you yourself are hearing what you're chanting. And our acharyas have taught us this principle to say that the moment you do that, the attention is in the ear, and therefore your mind will not be distracted. Today I'm going to share with you the secret to mind control. Everybody wants to make their mind their friend, right? Or else your mind becomes your greatest enemy. So the secret to mind control is when you chant the Lord's holy name, make sure you hear your own voice. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Right? Got it. So that's the medication with due attention. So what is the care part? What's the due care that goes with the attention? The due care is like when you go to the hospital, there's sterility maintained in the hospital. The sheets are cleaned regularly and they put in an autoclave to make sure they're sterile. They wear gloves, it's cleaned, it's sprayed, it's sanitized, all the things. They've got fancy equipment and all the time to make sure that it's as bug-free as possible. That is the due care. In the same way, when we are chanting the holy names, we must maintain our own sterility. Do not contaminate your life and your chanting by committing more sinful activities. Because what's the use? Somebody is trying to put out a fire and another person is pouring petrol on that fire. You may say, oh no, I'm not putting a lot of petrol, but I'm only putting half a cup of petrol on the fire. So the due care in this care and attention means that we maintain a sterility in our lives. That sterility means that we reduce our sinful activities to be as near to zero as possible. Gambling turns people into cheats and liars. You'll never get an honest gambler. Never. So therefore, there's a particular prohibition on gambling. If you want to connect with the supreme absolute truth, if you want to learn how to speak the truth, if you want to teach your children how to speak the truth and to tell the truth, and all parents love that. We want our kids to be honest and truthful. Make sure you yourself don't gamble and don't allow them to gamble. Whether it's betting on the races or in the casinos or this or that. And may start as play, but it'll end up becoming a lot worse. Similarly, maintain a clean life. We say, there's a favorite saying, right? Cleanliness is next to godliness. That's a famous English saying. But our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, the personality you see in his murti form at the back of this temple, who started this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, he says cleanliness is godliness. Not next to, is. And the way to maintain cleanliness is avoid illicit sexual activity. As long as we indulge in such activity, we'll always be unclean. Have you noticed that burglaries committed by drug addicts are almost invariably violent? Has anybody noticed that? Burglaries committed by drug addicts, are almost invariably very violent. Do you know why? Intoxication results in loss of mercy. You become merciless through intoxication. So therefore, avoid all intoxication. Don't think because we saw, and those who are my age will know, you saw Dean Martin or you saw Marilyn Monroe with a cigarette in their hands and posing, you know, like handsome dudes and seductive women on the set that you will follow and you'll emulate them because you've seen it. And worse than smoking is all the other things. All the Wunga addicts that are around today, they don't think twice about putting a knife through you. as long as they get their fix. So intoxication, addiction leads to a loss of compassion, heartlessness. Here we're trying to cultivate softness of the heart, because the Supreme Lord is resident in the region of the heart. It's now parched like a desert, and we're trying to make it a fertile field so that the Lord can take residence there. And therefore, intoxication, even the subtle intoxicants, should be avoided, because they all lead to greater and greater maladies. Have you noticed also that people these days are very intolerant? Have you noticed that? Like, even I've seen it in particular in young couples. At the slightest point, they get ticked off with each other. Partners they just go into a frenzy. So this intolerance is a result of the inability to perform austerity. And the ability to perform austerity is hampered when we cause harm and hurt to other living entities. So killing of animals just to satisfy one's tongue, when there are other options available, know for certain they result in your inability to perform austerity, and therefore leads to intolerance. So when one is getting cured of the diseases, then gradually, as the tongue can no longer taste the harsh bitterness that was going on at the beginning, and that eases and then gets sweet, in the same way, all these other contaminants in one's life that takes away the sterility in our own micro-environment, that takes away our ability to administer the medication with due care and attention, that gets lost, and that gets neutralized. So that's what you see when people getting cured. These are some of the milestones. And when somebody is cured of the disease, what happens? Now let's talk when somebody is cured. They're happy. The first thing you'll notice, they're happy, because when somebody is diseased, they're suffering. In the disease condition, the hallmark of a diseased person is that they are suffering. Now, who amongst us here will say that we do not suffer? And what are the symptoms of the suffering? Birth, disease, old age, and death. Death is the final arbiter, and the final emphasis is shown of disease or suffering. So to suffer death means you have to take birth. You can only die if you're born. So birth, and ask pregnant women, was it fun to be pregnant? Mothers? Those especially who went to torrid pregnancies, those who had difficult childbirths, those who had, everyone will tell you it's not a bed of roses. So birth, disease is self-explanatory. Old age, we have a lot of people here over 60. Ask them, speak to them and see. Speak to your parents, grandparents. Tell them, is it fun to be old? When you got poor control of your bowel and bladder and other things going on, your memory is going down the drain. So these things all wane and disappear, right? So when the sign of a cured person is that they're happy. And the other sign of a cured person is that they go out to tell others, please, here is the answer to your own disease condition. This is what you should be doing. Please take it seriously. Please contemplate on this. Come. Ask questions. Remove all your doubts. Clarify everything. And get inspired. Become wiser. Become inspired. Become stimulated. Become energized. And develop your relationship. Deepen your relationship with the Supreme Lord. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hai Andhakara. Jahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Maya Adhikar. That wherever there is the Supreme Lord Krishna, there will always be light. And in the presence of light, ignorance or Maya cannot stand a chance. We say it very beautifully when we say that all the darkness in the world cannot put out the light of even one lamp. So, dear people, today's presentation is to get you inspired and to get you to contemplate the deeper meanings of our existence and not to waste our lives away. As Ashley had done. Today's celebration of Ashley's life is a very deep and profound message to every one of us. And therefore it behoves us, because whoever is gathered here today has a connection with Ashley. And remember this, for the soul there is neither birth nor death, nor having once been does it ever cease to exist. The soul is eternal. So Ashley is eternal. His body has perished. But Ashley, the person, is eternal. And therefore it behoves us to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the best ways possible. You can do whatever comes naturally to you, but the Maha Mantra, which is the greatest of all mantras, is the simplest and easiest way that's been given by our acharyas. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I've been requested just to explain very briefly what is the next part of today's program. It's called Pushpanjali. Pushpanjali, the very word means the offering of flowers with folded hands. That's what the literal translation of Pushpanjali. And flowers are very dear to the Supreme Lord. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Patram pushpam phalam toyam, yo me bhaktiya prayashrati, tadaham bhakti upakratam asnami prayatatmanaha. That when one offers with love and devotion a flower or some petals to Krishna, he accepts it. So today we will offer now, you see Ashley's photograph is here next to the altar, but we'll place it next to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, whilst the devotees are singing some sacred songs. We'll offer the flowers. You can just offer it 3 times around Ashley's frame. Separate the flowers into 2. So to have 2 equal amounts. And with your right hand, offer it 3 times around Ashley and offer it at his feet. And then with the other hand, put it in your right hand now, and then offer it 3 times around the feet of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami and leave it at his feet. That simple act of devotion will give you and your family eternal spiritual benefits. And this is our conclusion of today's festival and prayerful ceremony for the benefit of Ashley and his family. I thank you very much for your attention. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for that really wonderful class. I really enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed it just as much. So we are drawing to a close of the program. Just one more addition before we go to the flower offering. We will be singing a very deep song that is sung in the mood of separation from the devotees, from the Vaishnavas. And we'll be doing that, and thereafter we will move to the Pushpanjali offering. I would like to take this moment to thank you all for coming today and for joining us. Like I said, my mom and I deeply appreciate all of your support during the past year. It has really touched us. Would also like to thank the temple so much for letting us host this program here and for really helping us with all the arrangements. We couldn't have done it without them. So in closing, from me, I would like to just offer a couple of words of comfort that was said by one of our great sages and philosophers hundreds of years ago. It's an excerpt from a poem that goes, "He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around." It speaks to the fact that Vaishnavas live eternally, and in that eternal life, always spreading the holy names of God. So while Dad might not be physically here, but spiritually, he lives on eternally. Thank you so much once again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So before we sing this beautiful bhajan, it's a song of separation. We'll just quickly read the translation so it gives you the actual mood of the song. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. Janilo Premadana Karuna Prashur Eno Prabhu Kotagela Acharya Thakur. Kaha mora swarup rupa, kaha sanatan, kaha dasa Raghunatha, patita pavan. Kaha mora bhatta yuga kaha kavira eka kela kota kela Koranatara Pasane koti bomatam anala pasibo korange gunirani de kota gilapabo सब संगीरा संगे जय कैला बिला से संग न पाय कंदे नरचमदा Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, sorry, just something I forgot to mention earlier on. When you're done with your flower offering and we've concluded, prasadam, which is sanctified food, will be served downstairs. So please don't believe before having something to eat. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Bandho moy savadana mati. Bandho moy savadana mati. Jahar prasadi bhai e bhavatoriya ja. Jahar prasadi bhai e bhavatoriya ja. Krishna prapti hoya hoite. Krishna prapti hoya hoite. Guru mukha padma vakya chite te khoriya kya. Arana khoriya mone aka. Arana khoriya mone aka. Shri Guru Charane Rati Ese utamagate Je prasade pure sarva asa Je prasade pure sarva asa चकुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्तिया होते अविज विनाश जाते वेद गायार चरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना प्रभु खोल दया देह मोरे पाद चया प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पाद चया एब जस गुस्तु त्रिभुवाना शिल प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना जय वैष्णव ठाकुर वैष्णव ठाकुर वैष्णव ठाकुर जय वैष्णव ठाकुर जय वैष्णव ठाकुर वैष्णव ठाकुर वैष्णव ठाकुर जय वैष्णव ठाकुर नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नित्यानामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पश्चात्तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौरा भक्त वृंद चैतन्य नित्यानंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Patita Bhavan Srila Prabhupada ki, Ashley Prabhu Vaishnav Thakur ki, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari. Jai Om Vishnu.